Hello. So what's the big tax story today? Basically, it's that HMRC has discovered 500,000 names of people who have offshore accounts and who live in the UK. This story was broken in the Sunday Times, and I was on Radio 4 this morning just talking about it. The question is, have these people paid enough tax? And in fact, most people who have offshore accounts have not paid the right amount of tax. Indeed, that's why a lot of these accounts have been set up. So who are these people with money offshore? Well, HMRC is very keen to make clear that these are not just big rollers and guys with corporate jets and everything like that. These are ordinary people who have businesses or a bit of money that they put aside and they sent it offshore at some stage in the past. They've stressed how it could include a Blackpool landlady, pub landlords, taxi drivers, anyone at all really. The other thing is that this statistic of 500,000 people means that 1 in every 100 people has some money stashed offshore. So that means that someone you know has got something they've hidden from the revenue. Of course, they won't have told you that, and you probably won't know they've got savings offshore. But statistics show that basically you will know at 2 or 3 people who have got money offshore, and most of those have something to hide from the revenue. So are we talking about complicated bonds and trusts and all sorts of fancy financial things? No, we're talking about bank accounts, savings accounts and cheque accounts. Often I find these were opened maybe in the 1980s when, believe it or not, the high street bank manager will have encouraged you to open them. That was quite the norm back then. The banks have since learned to their cost that it's not a very good idea, and they've had to hand a lot of information over to HMRC, in some cases to avoid the banks themselves getting embroiled in tax legal cases. Also, HMRC has obtained some information from an ex-employee of a bank who stole the data and then proceeded to hawk it around Europe, selling to different tax jurisdictions. So that's an unusual one. But what they've now got is a database of massive numbers of people with offshore money. And if only they had the resources to deal with them, then in the next year they would probably contact all these people. In reality, it'll take them a number of years to get to everyone. So what should you do if you are affected by this video and by having money offshore which hasn't been declared? Well, first of all, don't assume that you lose all the money if you clear it up with HMRC, particularly because they can only go back 20 years. This means that if you lodge that money, say you sold a holiday home in 1988 in France, and you lodged your money to an offshore account, you should have paid tax when you made a profit selling that holiday home. But you lodged it to an offshore account in Jersey in 1988. HMRC cannot touch the original money. They cannot touch the gain or the tax on it back in 1988. Nor can they have anything to do with the interest earned longer than 20 years ago. So what we now see is people who have maybe done something bad in the 1980s and HMRC can't touch it. All they can get is tax on the interest earned in the last 20 years. They will of course want interest on that tax because you're paying it late, and they'll charge you a penalty based on the tax. It'll be a percentage, maybe in the range 30 to 50% of the tax that you owe. So what should you do? Well, the first thing is doing nothing is really not a very wise option. A lot of the people with these accounts are in their 60s and 70s, and I must stress that it's not a good idea to keep this money and to die with it out there, because your executors and their solicitors will be duty bound to inform HMRC that they have discovered these offshore bank accounts. All that does, it means that the same tax investigation will be done after your death as would have happened before your death. The only thing is you're not there to help explain it and to outline the circumstances of what happened and where the money went. So your executors might well end up paying tax on estimates produced by the revenue, and therefore they might end up paying far more than if you cleared things up while you're around to answer the questions and write the check. So what should you do? Well, my advice is that you should contact a tax expert as soon as possible so that you can admit this to the revenue before they come to you. You can contact me via our website, which is Houston without the O at the beginning, houston.co.uk, or you can phone me on 028 9080 6080. We'd be glad to help, and thank you for listening.